Hello and welcome to my compulsory question 3, where I'm going to be explaining how my production skills developed throughout the project. I'm going to be talking about the 3 main stages, which include pre-production, production and post-production. When my group was first formed, we all had quite different ideas of what type of film we should be making, so we all had to work together to merge together our ideas. This proved to be quite difficult at first, which led to us creating a whole other idea and helped us to develop our collaboration skills. After, we had to pitch the film to the class, which helped us to work on our public speaking and gain others' opinions on what would make our film even better, which we could then later take on board. Before we started our film, we completed a pre-task called Have You Fed the Fish? Through this, we learned how to use the digital camcorder and Adobe Premiere Pro. This meant that when we started filming and editing our film, we already knew how to do the basics, so I could quickly start. However, we did not learn everything we needed to know, so we still had to learn some stuff along the way, such as sound editing and colour grading. Initially, we were planning on filming both at the Barbican Centre and Izzy's house, so we had scheduled a day in for each. However, as our script changed, we no longer had to film at the Barbican, so we instead adjusted our schedule for 2 more days of filming at Izzy's house. After the first day, we realised that we had to solidify our script even further for the next day of filming, which was almost 2 weeks later. This means that our second day of filming was a lot more productive, but after this day we realised that we still had more to film. This led to us scheduling 2 more days of filming, where we finished all of the filming for our film. Originally we were planning to film at the Barbican Centre, so one afternoon we went to visit to see what it would be like to film there. We made a lot of photos to see the different shot types we could use, and it would have looked really good to film there. However, it did not fit into our script after we changed it, which meant that we could no longer film there, which was a shame. We also conducted a recce at our other location of Izzy's house. We went and took lots of photos to see how we could shoot the film and to see if there were any problems. For example, one issue that we noticed was that you could hear the train track in the background, which meant that we had to adjust the times of when we would film in order to not hear this while filming. For costume, we made sure to wear the same outfit each day that we filmed. This was crucial to make sure that it was obvious that it was all set on the same day and for continuity. We also kept all of the equipment the same so all the shots would match up in the way that they were filmed. However, one thing that we changed was that we decided to film the CCTV camera shot on a digital camera that Izzy had at her house, so we adjusted our filming slightly to fit that in. Initially, when making the risk assessment, we were planning on filming in public in London, so there were a lot more risks to think about. For example, the camera being stolen or members of the public interfering. However, when we decided to only film at Izzy's house, the amount of risks greatly decreased. However, there were still some that we did not expect until it came to it. The initial risks we thought about were roads, as Izzy's house are on the main road, and we had to film establishing shots, and the camera being stolen when filming outside. However, a risk that became apparent while filming was standing on top of things for high-angle shots. This happened twice, once on a short wall outside Izzy's house, and also standing on the desk for an overhead shot. To minimise the risk of falling, we helped whoever was filming up and down and had someone holding the person up for extra support. Originally, when we were writing our script, we had another storyline similar to ours now. However, as we were writing it, we decided to change our story, which meant that we did not have a very strong script. This resulted in us having a lot of dead dialogue, which we had to cut out, and a few versions of the script before our final version. Due to the script changes, we also had to update the storyboards. This led to us having multiple versions of the storyboard, which ultimately also meant that our skills in storyboards also developed due to redoing them so often. As we had multiple versions, it also meant that we could take the best parts out of each initial storyboard to make the best final outcome. To have clear sound quality, we decided to use a boom microphone, which we plugged into the camera. The boom was used so that you could hear the dialogue clearer without background noise. We did a test shoot first and tested this out, shooting a short piece of dialogue with and without the boom. This made it obvious to us that we should use the boom for the dialogue. The boom worked most of the time, however, upon reflection, we did not always hold the boom close enough to the dialogue, which meant that our audio levels did not always match up when imported into Premiere Pro. This was one of the biggest issues with our film, as the audio jumped around. As we had a lot of computers in the scene, the boom also picked up a lot of the buzzing in the background, which was very obvious in some of the clips. This meant that in post-production we had to edit the audio levels quite a bit. To film, we used a camera and a tripod. These were both very easy to use, so we had no real issues with this. We tried to make as many different shots from different angles as possible, as we did not yet know how we would want to edit them all together. This was successful as it gave us a variation when editing. It also meant that now we had a lot of different types of shots, which makes our film very visually interesting. We also decided while filming to use a small digital camera to film CCTV footage. As it had to be shot from very high up, we attached it to the tripod and then held the tripod up as still as possible so that it was a high angle shot, making it look more believable. As we were only filming at Izzy's house now, it made it a lot easier to film as we were familiar with the location. After initially filming the establishing shots, our next filming day we decided to go back and refilm some. This was as we wanted to have big variation of shots which led up to the house, as we were inspired by the opening sequence of Ripley, made in 2024. Originally we were just shooting typical medium shots, and we did not have a lot of variation in shot types and angles, so therefore on our second day of filming we wanted to have more different shots, so we've refilmed some scenes from different angles and distances so that the film could have more different types of shots. I am happy that we did this, as now our film has more contrasting shots, which makes it more engaging. When filming, we made sure to wear the same clothes on each day for continuity, which was very important to have our film make sense. When we wrote the first draft of the script, we had a lot of dead dialogue. This added nothing to the story, so we decided to cut a lot of it out, which was successful as it meant that the dialogue did not seem like it was being dragged on. Before we started editing, we reviewed all of our footage and used a traffic light system to separate them. This system means that we tagged all of the footage we were definitely going to use as green, the footage we were unsure about as orange, and the footage we were definitely not going to use as red. This meant that when we were editing, we would only have to import the green footage and some of the orange footage, which would make it easier to sort through the footage when we were using them while editing. Editing is where we learnt the most throughout this process. At the start, we just created the full timeline and then later went through it to refine it. We initially selected what shots we were going to be using and then edited these together to make the main story. Later on in the process, we went back and replaced some shots with others, which we later deemed were better. Throughout this process, we also edited the length of certain shots so that there were more smooth transitions between each shot, which were very important for the overall finished film. After putting together the main body of the film, we started colour grading the film. To do this, we researched different presets online and tried out a few on our film. To get these onto Premiere Pro, we had to download these presets into the Lumetri Looks file in Premiere Pro, and then we could use them. After finding one that we liked, we applied it to each of the shots. However, after watching through the film, in some shots where the lighting was less good and bright, we realised that we would have to adjust some other settings so that they all matched. As we could not change the intensity of the preset, we then went and changed the contrast and brightness and shadows of some of the shots so that they were not too dark in comparison to some of the other shots. To find background music, we looked on YouTube for a very long time in order to find music that worked well with our film. Once we found it, we converted it to an MP3 file and then inserted it into the film. We initially adjusted the volume levels of the shots so that you would be able to hear the dialogue over the music. However, this led to a mismatch of volume levels. Therefore, we changed the dialogue volume levels to what they were originally and then adjusted the music to the dialogue, which worked a lot better. As we used different music in different parts, we made sure to cut the music so that they blended together well and that there weren't any sharp changes like there were before we changed this. When we put in titles originally, we wanted them to line up with the surroundings. For example, putting them slanting up the wall of the stairs so that it looked like they were stuck on the wall. However, we tried this and it did not look very good, so we decided to instead just center the names, which also means that it all looks a lot more cohesive, so it's ultimately better. We also tested out a number of different fonts before landing on one, which we then imported into Premiere Pro. Overall, I feel like I have learnt a lot on this journey, which I can apply to many different things. To list a few: Premiere Pro editing, which I can now apply effectively in both my media A-level as well as my art A-level, which will be very useful. Organisation, which will be useful for whatever I do. Public speaking, which is important to be successful in life. Collaboration, which I need to be able to successfully work together with other people. Assessing risks, which is needed to be safe. and many more. So to conclude, the process of making this film has taught me a lot, which I will continue to use.